Good afternoon, everyone. I will just give 30 seconds while people join and then we will get started straight away. But please do pop in the chat where you're joining us from. Feel free to say hello. Let us know if you've been to any of the other sessions so far. But on that note, I'm sure people are still filtering in, but we will just kick off. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today is the last of our expert fireside sessions. So far, we have had three wonderful people join us and share the secrets behind their growth. I'm Kaylee. I'm the head of partnerships and growth here at Telaroo. Last week, we were joined by Grace Hardy, who is the founder of Hardy Accounting and host of the Unconventional podcast. But before I hand over to today's guest, just a little bit of housekeeping. There is a Q&A box. Please do use that. Pop any questions that you have for Ariana in there. And also feel free to use the chat to share your thoughts. Agree with us, disagree with us. Just no heckling, please. But without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Ariana. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me, Kaylee. Hi, everybody. As Kaylee said, my name is Ariana. I'm the Managing Director of Majors Accounts & Co., which is a family-run accountancy business based in South East London. We've been going as a business for, I think, 18 years now or so. I was 13 when I first started. So it's been a journey, from day one to where we are now and having taken over and transformed the business. But I guess we'll get more into that during this session. But thank you so much for joining.
Precisely. So we are going to be talking all things growth, but before I start grilling you on that, question for everyone that's joined us, which is year-on-year growth a top priority for your firm? It's been really interesting watching the results of this over the last few sessions as to those where actually its main objective, right the way down to people that are saying actually growth isn't their focus right now. So really interested to hear what people have to say. But while people are filling that in, let's talk about your journey so far. How did you first get into the wonderful world of accounting?
It's all because I wanted to. I wasn't forced at the age of 13, right? That's what every 13-year-old is dreaming about. No, so my dad actually started the business up and it was his side business. And when you're first starting up, you don't necessarily have the money to be able to afford loads of people coming in and doing work. So I was there. Some people get pocket money and doing chores around the house. Mine was my £5 a day, working at the weekends, holidays, all of that in the business. But I started off on Excel by hand, then bookkeeping, very basic bookkeeping, and then working my way up. Through that, when I finished sixth form, I was due to go to university, and then discussing with my dad, we thought about, well, uni is 3 years, and then you could only get 3 exemptions for ACCA and further kind of qualifications. So we thought, why are we going to waste 3 years when I could do it in 3 months? Which is what I did. So first 3 months, got straight into ACCA, passed the first three exams, and then worked my way through that whilst working at the business, having a family at the same time, amongst some other things. So that's kind of where my journey started.
Amazing. I'm going to end that poll. We're almost 50-50 in terms of kind of how much of a priority growth is for people this year, whether it's main objective or kind of sitting amongst others, which is really exciting. I am going to launch a second one just to understand how people are intending to achieve that growth while I carry on with this. But let's launch that one. There we go. Is it going to let me do it? There we go. Perfect. So that journey from actually you working in the business to getting to the point where you were starting to take over, your dad was going to kind of take a step back. What did that conversation look like? How did you come to that conclusion and how did you start making that change?
Oh, that conversation, it was about a 3-year conversation to get to finally handing off. But I think I've worked myself through the business to eventually do that one day, right? So we had to discuss that because originally I wanted to do law and become a lawyer. And there was that, I guess, succession planning, thinking a bit further ahead. Well, what are we going to do with the business? Because the business was growing. It's going to get to a point where my dad's not going to be able to be there always. And I guess the natural step is, okay, well, seeing as you're working here, you might as well get into accountancy and take over one day. So I think 2017 is when I started to really focus on business development and business management. Up until that point, I had been focused on working my technical knowledge up essentially. Then I focused on what kind of systems do we have in the business, what do we need to have, and making those changes, because we didn't even have a client list, not even on Excel. You know, everything was in the filing cabinets. That's all you needed, so it's fine. So it was from scratch, but I think it's so much more difficult when you've got an established business. We had at this point maybe 6 or 7 employees. We had 500 clients, so it wasn't, you know, a startup. It was a profitable, sizable business. So doing all of that backwards in a way was quite difficult, but going through that, and then everyone was talking about MTD. I know we've said this so much, but that was the catalyst for us in changing. And I think if it wasn't for that, probably I may have got to it at some point, but not as fast as I did. I had put in some systems, but again, it was based on how my dad ran it and how the team were used to working and how clients used to communicate with us. And then when I went to QuickBooks Connect for the first year, I stepped into this world that I did not know existed. I was literally thinking we must have been living under a rock. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff was about, you know. So for me, it was an eye-opener to then change the way we thought about business. It wasn't just let's get our work done and that's it. It's actually we can provide a much better service whilst not working 7 days a week, because my dad worked 7 days a week for 14 years and you just can't sustain that, you know, and that there has to be a better way, and there was.
Absolutely. I think the reason I find your journey so fascinating is because I think we hear a lot from practice owners that are just starting up and kind of their process of going in and getting all the tech and the systems right from the start. Or we hear from the really big established firms that have their ways of doing things. And I think we often don't hear about those established firms that are having to go through that transformation journey and the work that goes into that. How did you even know where to start?
Honestly, the journey was so difficult. When we started, there still weren't that many firms talking about it, doing this, right? So, and especially me, who came from no background, no support in tech, didn't know anybody else who was doing it, didn't know what was right, what was wrong. So it was trial and error. Throughout, we started off with our bookkeeping package first, because that was kind of our main way of working, and then slowly it was adding other packages. Like, okay, we need payroll, let's add that on now, and see after each step what else was required. There were mistakes made along the way, of course, because you don't know what you don't know in that process. I learned so much about technology and how loads of things, because I think at the beginning you get tech happy. It's like, oh, this can do this. Yes, I'm going to get this and that. And it got to a point where we had so many apps, and it's just, okay, that specific software may be best of breed, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't fit with our processes. So it's making sure that you are able to recreate your processes that you have already using the tech. They will change slightly, but it's trying to keep the same kind of thing to be as efficient as possible and to have more contact with clients, right? Because I think initially when I started it as well, I thought, wow, all this tech, what are we going to do? We can have much less staff, we can make loads more money. And, you know, at the start, that's what I think a lot of people think it is, but it's not. It's the work that you do changes. You focus on quality, not just quantity and getting stuff out. You're focused on the quality of service, having more conversations with clients, having that time to be able to speak to them, but also work from absolutely anywhere. Before, we were chained to the desk 7 days a week. So it's changed the way we live as well. But you learn so much, so much throughout that process. And as I said, it's all trial and error.
I think there's two things I really want to touch on. One is the team, and the other is clients. I think we'll start with clients. When
Yeah.
you started making all of these changes, and we've obviously worked together for a good few years now, right? And there was definitely a point where you were calling clients and saying, hey, actually, you owe us money and we're putting your fees up and we're changing this and we're not going to be doing it this way anymore. And all of those kind of conversations that people find quite difficult. How did you handle that? And what was the response from clients?
I think one thing to really understand is initially clients don't care what you're using. And when I started, that was my biggest worry. It's, oh, I'm going to use this tech, clients are not going to be on board, they're going to hate it, blah, blah, blah. So there was this journey initially whilst we got used to the systems internally, but clients really didn't care that much until we got to the final point where we'd sorted out all of our systems internally. Then it was just, okay, now you're not going to send us things via paper, you're going to use these apps and things like that. For the majority, it wasn't difficult, I have to say. I think that's our misconception. They're not going to like it. We trained our clients to work with us in a specific way, which was the bring us your paperwork. If you want a meeting, it has to be in the office. We have to meet face to face. I have to send your payslip by post. All of that stuff. That's how we trained them. So it wasn't their fault. This was just a new mindset. Did it take time? Absolutely. So our process was with some clients, we were able to send an email, send links, send videos, and they just got it. They got on board. They said, okay, this doesn't seem too difficult, especially if all you're asking them is to take a picture of a receipt. It's not huge, and I think you can ease clients into it. You don't need to say, use all of these in one go and go for it. That's absolutely not going to work. It's a step-by-step process. Once they're comfortable with one, then you move them on to the next one, depending on how involved they want to get, right? There were some clients that needed a phone call to say, listen, this is what we've done. We're going to need to change the way we work with each other. And after some time on the phone, they get it. They understand that the world is changing, right? And then you get those that are absolutely no, not doing it. I am not going to. I'm going to send paperwork. You're going to use that because I'm not giving you anything else. In that case, especially because there were some of them that were clients that we didn't really want to get rid of, I had two different ways of dealing with them. One, I said, okay, that's absolutely fine initially, just to get them used to the process. You're going to come in, bring the paperwork, you're going to wait while we scan every single one, and I'm going to charge you £300 an hour to scan these. If you're happy with that for the next, say, 6 months, because after that, that won't be an option, then that's fine. Or the other way that worked with one client who was so against any kind of tech, I brought him down. He had 7 businesses, so this would have been a sizable client to lose in one go, right?
Yeah.
I said to him, give me your phone. I downloaded everything, took a picture, showed him my screen, and I said, how long did that just take me? He's like, what did you do? I was like, just took a picture. Well, that's it. He's like, yeah, that's it. That's all you needed. Instead of spending like 2 hours to come down and see us, you could have just done this from home. You don't have, because when he would come, he'd spend all day here basically talking about one business, then another, then speaking to one team member, then another. And I was like, why? You could have done so much more with your day than coming down. If you want to come down, see us for fun, that's fine. We'll go have a meal together and reminisce or whatever. But for work reasons, there are other ways you should be spending your time. From that moment on, he was like, this is easy. I'm sold. That's it. So I say to people, if he was able to get on the systems and you do not know how against tech he is, then anybody can. It's just the way that you present it to them. And in many instances, just showing them and taking their phone and doing it in front of them gets rid of all that misconception of, oh, I thought it was going to be really hard. This is actually really easy, you know, and all of our clients are so used to that now. Obviously, it's been a few years now, but we have no conversations, no one saying, oh, I can't do that, I don't want to use this. It's, can you please send me that link, or can you please have you checked Dex, for example, because I've got everything up on there. It's things like that they're so used to it now.
I think that's exactly it. I think particularly in like the accounting bookkeeping space, there's a lot of things that from a client perspective feel really mysterious. And they feel like they don't really understand what's happening or why they need to do it or where the information's going. I think, like you say, sometimes just taking the time to sit down with a client and walk them through, this is what you're doing and this is what it does for me, and here's the time that you're going to get back, or here's the result that you're looking for, is sometimes all they need. And I think it is inconvenient, but that little bit of inconvenience is going to save so much in the long run, right?
Thanks so much.
Okay, that covers clients. The team. The team, I think, is an interesting one, right? Because this is a team that was originally built by your dad, right? It was a team of people that, again, he had trained to work in a certain way and to do things in a certain way. And you were coming in and you were shaking that up and you were changing things. How did that go down?
Yeah, that wasn't great. So that was I think out of everything, the one thing that I didn't expect, I thought that was going to be the easier part of the transformation, because they're your team. You ask them, there's a job that's come in, they do it. If we've got to change something that we do, they do it because that's part of their job, right? But you forget that humans hate change. I think I'm a bit of an anomaly with that. I absolutely love it. I thrive on it. That's what gets me excited, having to learn something new. But the majority of people don't like it, especially when they're comfortable. And it's something that works. It's our team initially, they didn't take it seriously. They didn't think it was going to happen. And I tried to entice them to get on the journey, to talk to them about, oh, guys, it's going to save your time. You're not going to sit there like typing things out anymore. You can focus on what you're studying for. And a lot of them said, we'd like to learn more. We'd like to learn more about the business and have more contact with clients and have that career progression. I was like, this is the perfect chance, because I'm saving your time from doing all that data entry, which is not helping anybody. It's not giving anyone any value, and you can focus on the things that you want to. 6 months of talking like that, and it was, oh, we've got so many deadlines this month, can we just push it to next month? And I was like, okay. And then they'd go up to my dad and say, can you tell her in, we're so busy, can we not, because we've got so much to do. And obviously my dad was completely with the team, because that's what he was used to. He built a successful, profitable business, and why would we want to shake that up, right? And our team were also speaking to other people in the industry. No one was talking about this. It was just, as far as they knew, I'd lost my mind one day and said, we're going to completely destroy how we work and set it up in a completely different way. And they're thinking, well, our clients won't like that. They work with us like this, for example. So 6 months went by and nothing happened. And the minute I left the accounting conference, I felt like we were behind whilst I was there. So 6 months for me, in my head, I was like, oh my God, we're getting further and further behind. So at the 6 month mark, I said, right, this is it. Can't do this anymore. We are going to go on this journey. Whether it's going to be successful or not, we're just going to take the plunge, take the risk. Other people are doing it, because there was this whole world that I never knew existed. So why can't we? We have to start somewhere. And anyone who wants to stay on that journey with us, you're welcome to continue. Whoever doesn't, you're going to need to find something else for yourself, because we're not going backwards and we're not stopping. So be aware of that's what we're going to do. We had so much difficulty in getting the team on board, but it meant finding, what helped me was having one kind of champion that understood it earlier, and he could see the benefits, and then getting him to help me push through. And I think by the end of that process, we started off with only 25 team members, and we were left with around 4 of them, the original team. So for me, that is not what I wanted at all. I think there is that fear and that threat, as with so many industries, as we're talking about AI as well now, that the tech is going to come and take our jobs and we're no longer needed. That's not at all what it was. It's a misconception of what the technology does. Technology is changing our role, which we need to change sooner or later, because other people are going to do it, and they're going to provide a different level of service, which our clients are going to expect. And by just giving them compliance, or just here's a tax figure, without having the time to speak to them, that's just not going to cut it anymore, because they know the tech is out there to help us with some of that basic stuff that took a lot of time. And we trained that team for so many years in how to communicate with our clients and how we work and what kind of clients we have, and technical knowledge that they built up over all those years was lost. And that's not something that I wanted to happen, because I wanted to use that knowledge in a much better way to get us even further. But unfortunately, I guess that there was that threat. As I said, no one else that they knew anyway was doing it, and it just sounded like, okay, so the boss's daughter has come, she thinks she knows something, she's destroying the business, and we're all going to lose our jobs because this ship is sinking, we need to get out ASAP. So unfortunately, we did lose a lot of that team. It changed the demographic in the team when they were replaced to a younger generation who didn't have the experience, but they had the willingness to learn, and that kind of experience of technology because they grew up with it, so it was kind of second nature. So they
Mm.
picked up that a lot quicker. So so it meant that we could focus on training them on technical accounting knowledge, so they understood what they were doing. It's not a case of the tech is doing it for us, because when it goes wrong, someone has to fix it. But yeah, it changed. It was, I guess, silver lining. They say it wasn't not exactly what I wanted, but it worked out okay in the end with the team who were ready for the tech at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was like you say, it was a lot of change, and some people just weren't on board with that, right? And I'm keen to know from an audience perspective how you feel your firm handles change management at the moment, because I think it's definitely something that a lot of businesses are still going through, right? And I think to follow on from that, you have branched out. You are now supporting other accountants with that digital transformation journey.
Yeah.
What have you learned through that process with your own people that you are now teaching essentially to these new firms when they're needing to take their own teams on that?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is kind of when you look back and learn from your own mistakes and journey, I think it's changing the way that I went on. So the apps that I chose first. And secondly, with the team, making sure that they're with you in every single meeting with all of the app vendors to make sure that your team are on board with it, take their opinions, because I was not doing the day-to-day work, right? So initially, I made the decisions based on what I knew, how I worked, when the firm was slightly smaller, because obviously as you grow, dynamics change, the way you work changes and things like that. So I think having them on board and having them make the ultimate decision, so they are held accountable. So if after a month, two, they say we don't like it, we don't want to use it, then they've got to come up with a reason why, because they're the ones that said to go ahead with it. And I think you find that they are a lot more accountable, and they do feel like they need to make it work because they're the ones that made that decision. So that's something that I do now. Even though we've been through that journey of transformation, it doesn't stop there. We change every single day still. I'm always on the lookout for technology, as if I don't have any in our firm, because there's always new things out there that can, or even updates from current app vendors that we work with, which we're not aware of those updates that can make our life so much easier. So it's constant knowledge, training, upskilling, and just being aware of what's in the market. But it's important to have your team with you because they are a lot more kind of on it with trying to make it work. They will try their best.
Absolutely. I think we see it quite a lot, right? We'll often speak to partners, directors, etc., in firms who will say, "We love Teleroom, it's a great idea, and we really want to do this." And then you're like, "Okay, well, what do you need it to do?" And they're like, "I don't really know," because they're not the people doing it, right? And so quite often I'm saying to people, go away and speak to your team that are actually doing this and get their list of non-negotiables, get their list of what they need the software to be able to do, and then let's have a call all together and walk
Yeah.
through that. Because like you say, your vision of what needs to happen and what might actually be happening on the ground, there are things that you can miss and things that people might not see. And like you say, I think when you bring the team into that, not only does it get them excited, but like you say, it holds them accountable to make it work because they've said, yeah, this is really going to help us. And they are then, like you say, way more inclined to put the work in to implement that, to go through that little bit of uncomfortableness of changing process, of getting clients on board, if they can really see and feel the benefit the other side.
Absolutely.
In terms of how people's firms are handling change management, we've got 33% saying good, and 67% saying neutral slash not sure, which makes me think that it's a little bit like when you ask people to score out of 10 and they give a 7 because they don't want to say it's really bad. So
Yeah.
I'm imagining someone probably thinking it's worse than neutral or not sure, but not necessarily wanting to say that. But I don't think they're alone in that. I think, like you say, the human condition is that we don't like change. It's really uncomfortable. And I think unless you can see the real benefit the other side, it's really hard to mentally stick with it and push through that. And I think, like you say, you are definitely an anomaly in that. But well done.
But I'd say the other thing though is you have to understand, because there are some times where we are trying to get people on board and you try, but you also have to recognize who's right to be on that journey with you, who is the right person to use the tech or whatever objectives you have in your firm. If you don't have people that have the same mindset as you or on the same path as you, no matter how good they may be technically or whatever, it's just not going to work. And I have that even not just with tech, but when I take someone on, I want to see what they're like as an individual. Is our vibe the same, right? Because they may not be the most technically knowledgeable, but that's fine because they're the same kind of person. We can work together. They're open to working with the way that I'm working or our business is working, and we can teach them. Versus someone who might be a genius but wants to do everything their way, which goes against all processes that you have in your business that long term will make things so much worse. So it's just as much recognizing who's right and who's not right for whatever journey you have in your business, and
Absolutely.
stopping there before it gets any worse.
Absolutely. I think we touched on this briefly in one of these sessions that we did with Mitch, where we were talking about like value-based hiring, right? And hiring people that share those values and that are going to deliver on them. Because like you say, the technical stuff can be taught, the systems can be taught, but actually the understanding of why you do things and the kind of values that you stand behind from a customer perspective, I think is the key thing there. And I think that's something you can't teach, right? It's a little bit like initiative. You can't teach initiative. You either got it or you don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the team dropping quite dramatically and in a relatively short space of time, capacity naturally drops with that. How did you handle that challenge so as to not let clients down and still grow the business?
So at the time during that process, we had half of the capacity that we had. One, because we were still running our old systems whilst we updated the new ones, so they were working in parallel, which obviously makes everything more difficult. And then having less of a knowledgeable team, it just meant that anyone coming in was being trained kind of intensively at the beginning, probably a lot faster than we may have done in the past. But I think that's just the nature of businesses nowadays, right? We have to use the word pivot during COVID, but now we have to pivot every day. As things change, we have to be dynamic and evolve and adapt according to the different issues we have every day. So I think going through that process, we learned to do that even better. It's not as slow paced as it used to be maybe a few years ago. Now we are expected, like if a client wants something, they want it yesterday, not even now. So it's being able to figure out a way of providing that service, and again with the team, seeing where everybody's strengths lie. We had some team members when we took them on as bookkeepers, and their work was just nowhere near the standard that you'd expect, but they were such nice people. I thought, okay, we moved them around 4 times until we found their sweet spot. And one in particular, he absolutely was amazing at attention to detail. So investigations and payroll for him, he would just fly through them because he was so focused on the attention to detail like nobody else. So that meant things that I used to do a lot of was taken off of me so I could focus on other things. And he was happier because he got to do what he liked. So it was, we can't, it takes ages to hire people, right? So you can't just try them out. They're not right. Okay, get rid of them. If they're the right people, just we moved them around until we found exactly what they were good at, and it worked out so much better for everyone in the long run because our quality of work, quality of service, team were happier, clients are happier, and it just meant that we could continue going forward with experts in each area.
100%. I think what's been really great to watch is that I think the first decisions you were making, some had some difficult outcomes, right? And I think it's natural in those moments to kind of question if you're making the right decisions. Are we doing the right thing? I'm believing in the vision, but like, are we going in the right direction? And I think now you're at a point where those decisions, no matter how difficult the outcome at the time, have led to such great things afterwards that actually I think you are now in a position where the decisions that you make, you're very confident in implementing them, right? And being confident in that, you know, the direction that the business is going. But I think a lot of people are really worried about that first bit of just going out and implementing the new ideas. And I guess that's the question for the audience now, right? Is do you feel confident in your approach to implementing new ideas, new services, new processes? Because we see it all the time. We speak to people who are spending hours and hours supporting business owners with making payments, doing it in some of the most painful ways possible. but they just aren't confident in going out and trialing it. And we are quite often hand-holding them through, let's just do it with one client and let's get really confident in that before we do the next bit. But I think lots of people are just nervous to even take that first step.
Do you know what? When I first started and I put this idea on the table with my dad, and I was still quite new in running the business, right? So, plus I'm his daughter, so he's always going to know best. He was like, okay, I see how this is going. So what you're going to do is destroy everything we've worked for. We'll probably lose everything. We'll be out in the streets with nothing to eat, but you carry on. You have a vision. And in my head, I was like, Tim, yeah, it's going to work because on paper, it it should have worked, right? But inside, I was like, God, I really hope this works. I was so scared, but you have to take some risk, right? And I think there's that fear of, oh, our clients won't like it. Our clients are with us because they like us working with us, not just because of how we send them an email with a tax figure. They like to speak to us. They're loyal to us. They've been with us for a while. So they're going to give you some grace if things go wrong, because it's not like it was plain sailing. As I said, I didn't have anyone to help me out, so I was just trial and error. But you have a goal and you're making the best decisions you can do at that point with the information you have to move forward. And as long as you have that kind of mindset, I think each decision, as you said, you become so much more confident with it, because you start to learn what to look out for. And I don't think you ever stop learning. To this day, I'm always taking decisions, learning new things. But I think that's any business, and making your clients aware of that, which is what I do now with clients. If we want to change something, or if it seems like they're being unreasonable, well, how about we get back to the human level and speak to them as a fellow business owner and say, hey, do you know you have these troubles in your business? Like, yeah, we do. Well, put yourself in my shoes now. This is the situation I have. I have a team. I have this. These cost this. Do you think, with the price you want, for example, am I going to make any profit? Does it make sense? What would you do? Would you give it to me at that price? And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of it like that. Yeah, no, you've got a point. You're out here to earn as well. You're not a charity.
That is one of the most important lessons that I always come back to, right? Because we'll get it. You get into the habit, you're emailing people, things like that. And there have been, in the last 5 years, probably a handful of times where I've had an email that I've gone, oh God, that person really woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
And I'll call them and I'll go, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, why? I'm like, that email makes me think you're not okay. The tone of that email is not an email of someone that we work in partnership with, that we have this relationship with. And I think sometimes it's that pattern interruption, isn't it? Of like, are you sure you're okay? And you kind of go back to basics and they go, oh, actually, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I was up all night with the kids and this, that, the other. And actually, I'm just not in a great mood today. And it's like, that's okay. But let's not be keyboard warriors, for a better phrase. And people get stuck behind that. And it's the same with, like you say, the making money thing. We get it all the time. Can we have a discount? And I go, I could, but where's the logic in that for me, right? We are also running a business that needs to be profitable so that we can continue to develop all the cool stuff that you're asking for and make sure that we are great for you and your clients. So no, you can't have a discount, and that's why. And it's the exact same reason that you would turn around to your clients and say that you can't discount it, right? And I think it is sometimes stripping it back and, like you say, having a conversation, kind of business owner to business owner, and saying, hey, let's chat this through like humans.
Absolutely. It makes such a huge difference, honestly, especially where you feel like clients are difficult. So they're going to have difficult clients, but a lot of the time you can probably resolve it with these kind of conversations.
Absolutely. Reminder to anyone watching, please do pop any questions in the Q&A, but I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to rattle through a few last minute ones for you. But what would be your advice? I've been asking people that were starting out, but I think actually the question for you is, what would be your advice for someone that's stepping into an established business to take the reins?
Be super determined, no matter what. I could have, the amount of people that were against what I was doing and my vision and said, you're inexperienced, don't understand this. Obviously, do your due diligence. Make sure that what you're trying to do with the business, however, whichever direction you want to take it in, it makes sense. Take on other people, listen to other people's advice, but make sure that it doesn't alter that confidence that you have in what you're planning to do. Because if I'd have done that, we wouldn't have got where we are now. I was stubborn and everyone was like, she's so unreasonable. Why can't she do this? Why? But Now we're reaping the rewards, and we've seen the benefits of what we've been through. It wasn't easy, but as long as you stick with what you have in your belief, and plus you need that to show kind of a different style of leadership and a different way that the business might be going. You need to stick to that, and to people to take it seriously as well.
Definitely. Biggest challenge to date?
Oh wow. There's so
Where do I start?
many. Where do I start? Obviously, I think it was the team during the digital transformation that was really difficult. I think one that probably was a little bit worse was the second time around, 2022. Just as I'd done the transformation process, the team were absolutely smashing it. They were all in their perfect roles, and I thought this time round, I was pregnant. I thought I'm going to have a great kind of maternity leave, and unfortunately, the team started to drop off just before I gave birth as well. So that was difficult in me literally coming out of hospital and getting straight back to work with the baby. But these are the things with, being business owners, we have to deal with things like this. But as with anything, I say there's a cycle. It feels like no one else is going through what you're going through, and it's like your world is ending. But actually stick through it, and there's a huge high that comes out from that. You've just got to believe in the process.
Absolutely. And then 2 audience questions for you. One is, how do you deal with bad apples in the team? First one.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think I feel like I'm better at dealing with it now. I think it comes with experience. If you see something that's not right, don't just let it slide. Make sure you make that individual know that you're not happy with something. Talk about how you can fix it and give them opportunities to improve. And because they may also not know that they're doing something that is affecting the team badly. Maybe that's just their personality. Maybe that's how they speak, and they don't mean things in a certain way that could affect others. But it's as soon as you see it, get on top of it and make sure you deal with it. If you see that it's not going anywhere, then it's make that decision to say, okay, we're not right for each other. But yeah, I think in the past I've left it to say, okay, let's just see. Hopefully they'll get the message, and maybe try and say something, but not directly, because I don't want to offend them. We're here to work at the end of the day. We'd love for everybody to get on. And in our firm, we say we're a family. But in a family, I don't know about yours, Kaylee, or anybody else's, but I'm sure there are times where you argue with your family, you want to kill each other, but that doesn't mean you don't love each other, right? So we are a team, we are a family, but we have to go through those times where, there are difficult periods, because that's where we learn. But if, it gets to a point where it's not happening and it's affecting your business, then you have to know when to part ways as well.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I think, like you say, I think the stuff that you let go tells the team that that's okay and that you accept it. And I think that can then create almost a resentment in the rest of the team that, like, someone's behaving this way and you're not doing anything about it. And that can be really, really negative. But I think the other piece you said that's really important is the idea of almost giving the benefit of the doubt, right? They might not be doing something very intentionally, right? If I think back to my early career, I have a very bad habit of, when someone puts a new idea out, my brain goes to, what are all the things that could go wrong? And let's address them straight away. The challenge with that is, if you are an influencing factor in a team and the first thing that you do is spit out all the bad things, the team automatically goes, well, that's a bad idea. When in reality, that wasn't my intention. My intention was, how do we head off any potential problems as quickly as possible? But the team take that as, there's loads of negatives here. So it is sometimes, like you say, they're just not aware of the impact that something they're doing might be having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, really interesting. I think that's pretty much it. The other question was something we've already covered. So a huge thank you to audience for those ones. But more importantly, a massive thank you to you for sharing and answering all of our wonderful questions today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
No problem. Thank you all for joining us. That was the last of our series. If you did miss any of the others, we do have the recordings. Please do reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to share them. And there will be a number of pieces of content coming out off the back of these that we will also be sharing around. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ariana, where's the best place for people to find you if they want to have a chat?
I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to message me there, or direct email riona@majorsaccounts.com, or pretty much on all social media platforms, or our website at majorsaccounts.com.
Amazing. Thank you very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone.